What would happen if all of the Pathfinder iconics played on the classic reality game show Survivor? Well, I want to offer a possible answer to that question on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that has finally decided to try some actual storytelling on this channel. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome to my annual New Year's Super video where I pick some kind of crazy topic and drive myself just a little bit insane by creating a super video or super video series around whatever the chosen topic would be. A couple of years ago, I ranked all of the classes in Pathfinder 2e. Last year, I ranked all of the ancestries in Pathfinder 2e. And let's be honest, a video ranking all of the backgrounds probably wouldn't do that well in terms of the YouTube algorithm. So instead, what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to answer a little bit of a hypothetical question that occurred to me a few months ago, and that is, how would the Pathfinder iconic characters fare if they were pitted against one another in the reality game show Survivor? Essentially, this video and the rest of the videos that will be appearing in this series is basically a work of fan fiction, for lack of a better term, where I'm going to be combining some of the elements of Paizo's writing with some of the elements associated with the game show Survivor, and I'm going to offer my take on at least a hypothetical outcome of all of the iconics choosing to play Survivor. But before I dive into all of that, I do want to talk a little bit about the setup for this video. Number one, let's talk about iconics, because this is a unique part of Paizo's fiction around the game Pathfinder. So in case you're not familiar, iconics are representative characters for each of the different classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So for example, you have the iconic fighter Valoros, or the iconic alchemist Fumbus, and these characters serve as stand-ins or samples for the different classes that can be sort of inspiration for people who might be checking out Pathfinder 2e for the first time. Basically, here are some characters that represent what these classes are that might help hook you into a particular class or a particular playstyle. Many TTRPGs will have artwork that is associated with a given class, but one of the cool things about Paizo and their team is they've actually developed pretty complex and well thought out backstories for the different iconic characters, meaning that you can go and read up on the backstories for every single major character that you see represented in the Pathfinder 2e books. In fact, I will be throwing a link to a Paizo wiki that actually has links to all of the iconic backstories in case you are interested in reading up on these characters and some of the interesting stories that Paizo has created for them. But for these videos, basically what I've done is I've taken a look at the different characters that Paizo has created, their personality, their backstory, and their skill set, and then tried to answer the question, how would they do if they were actually placed in the game show Survivor? There are a few housekeeping things I want to get out of the way really quick. Number one, my goal is for the videos in this series to be about an hour long, which means I don't actually know how many videos will be in the series until I get done recording all of them. But my goal here is to give you a pretty sizable and engaging narrative through all of the videos that are part of this. For purposes of how I worked my way through this story, one of the operating assumptions that I used is that it is the level 1 version of these characters that start out in this game. You can actually find sample level 1 character sheets for a large number of the Pathfinder 2e iconics, and for purposes of the story in these videos, I'm going to assume that it is the level 1 characters that are competing. However, as the story progresses, there are a couple of portions of the story where I am going to assume that some level ups take place. So about halfway through this story, I'm going to assume that the characters progress to level 2, and then near the end of the story, I'm going to assume that the characters actually reach level 3 as I work to determine how different aspects of the story play out. Another thing I would like to note is, the outcome of this story is going to be based on, well, my interpretations of how the characters would fare in that particular scenario. For the most part, I did not resort to rolling dice to figure out outcomes, although I will say there are several points in the story where I actually did resort to rolling dice because it was kind of interesting and difficult to decide exactly how different characters would do in a given scenario. Obviously, the final version of this story is hypothetical and has been invented largely by me, but I hope that this scenario is intriguing enough that you want to join in the conversation and offer your thoughts on this story and scenario as it develops. What that means is, jump down to the comments section and let me know which Pathfinder iconic you think is the most likely to win a game of Survivor, or offer some insights into how you think different iconics might perform. Which iconics are going to do well, which iconics are going home early, and which characters are going to fall oh so painstakingly short of actually taking home the final prize. And if you disagree with something that happens in this story, by all means, jump down to the comment section and let me know how you think that scenario might have played out instead, because I do think this is a fun thought experiment. By the way, if you can't tell, yes, this is the section of the video where I ask you to do all of that fun YouTube stuff. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that stuff helps to support the content that I create. And if you are particularly interested, feel free to check out my free Discord or my Patreon. Both of those will be linked in the video description below. But with all of that out of the way, as Jeff the Goblin would say, 25 days, 24 Pathfinders, 1 Survivor. Day 1. Let the games begin. The story of Pathfinder Mediogalti Island opens on a beautiful beach outside of a jungle on Mediogalti Island, where a number of Pathfinders have gathered to compete in the reality game show Survivor. The Pathfinder Society has decided they would like to do a new recruitment drive to help bring more people into the Pathfinder Society, and they think that Survivor Pathfinder Society is a great way to build up publicity. So, one of their venture captains, Jeff the Goblin, and a production team have brought together a team of new and excited Pathfinders to compete in the game show Survivor in an attempt to win an absurd amount of silver pieces and glory for themselves. On the northern shore of Mediogalti Island, not too far from the city Ilismagorti, Jeff and 24 survivors have gathered together for the game. To start the game off, Venture Captain Jeff the Goblin is dividing these 24 Pathfinders into 3 tribes representative of some of the major factions inside of the Pathfinder Society. The 3 tribes for the start of this game are the Swords Tribe, the Scrolls Tribe, and the Spells Tribe. The Swords Tribe represents the more martially inclined among the Pathfinder Society, the swords who love to discover new and unique ways to engage in combat and love researching ancient traditions of warfare. The Scrolls faction is for the more academically inclined, those who like to apply their skills to exploring the world around them and uncovering hidden truths. And then the Spells faction, in keeping with their name, centers around Pathfinders who love investigating arcane, occult, primal, and divine secrets throughout the world of Golarion. These Pathfinders have been equally divided among these 3 tribes or factions, and as the story opens, we are introduced to these 3 tribes. On the Swords Tribe, we have Amiri the Barbarian, Sela the Champion, Valoros the Fighter, Nalmika the Gunslinger, Celtiel the Magus, Sejan the Monk, Harsk the Ranger, and Jarel the Swashbuckler. On the next tribe, the Scrolls, we find Fumbus the Alchemist, Naoa the Exemplar, Droven the Inventor, Quinn the Investigator, Yoon the Kineticist, Mariciel the Rogue, Mios the Thaumaturge, and Feya the Witch. Finally, on the Spells tribe, we are introduced to Lim the Bard, Kira the Cleric, Lenny the Druid, Korakai the Oracle, Thalion the Psychic, Sione the Sorcerer, Ija the Summoner and her Eidolon Tuku, and Ezrin the Wizard. Now, as the tribes are introduced, it is fair to say that some of those who were selected for membership on different tribes seem a bit strange. However, fans of the show Survivor know that you always get at least a few questionable casting decisions on any season, and it does look like the Pathfinder Society was struggling just a little bit to get even teams for the purpose of this competition. In any case, Jeff the Goblin welcomes the Pathfinders to Survivor Mediogalti Island and spends a little time introducing them to the rules, to the environment, and explaining what the next few weeks of their life are going to be like. As Jeff the Goblin is talking, it is immediately apparent that some of the Pathfinders are familiar with one another. For example, the Goblin Alchemist Fumbus is through the roof that he is on the same team with his good friend, the Orc Inventor Droven. However, two other Pathfinders are a little bit heartbroken in their opening setup. Kira the Cleric and Mauriciel the Rogue have ended up on two different teams, and they are a little saddened to be apart, as they are in fact a married couple. However, it should be noted that Kira and Mauriciel are doing their best to hide their relationship because they don't want to be unduly targeted by other players too early in the game. So even though they're going to be playing on two different tribes, that does help to conceal that potential liability from the other players. After Jeff the Goblin gets done explaining the rules to the Pathfinders, he then presents a task to all three of the tribes right out of the gate, which is pick a tribe leader. Each tribe is instructed to select one individual from their tribe who will serve as the leader of the tribe and a representative should Jeff the Goblin need to call representatives from a tribe for any purpose throughout the game. Among the Swords tribe, Jarell the Swashbuckler, Valeros the Fighter, and Amiri the Barbarian all quickly throw their names in, excited at the opportunity to lead their particular group. However, once Amiri realizes that she has contenders for the position of tribe leader, she challenges Valeros and Jarell to an arm wrestling match over who gets to be the leader of the tribe, and Jarell and Valeros both decide that they don't want to take up the match, so they concede the position and Amiri is selected as the leader of the Swords tribe. As for the Scrolls tribe, almost all of the members of that tribe are extremely reluctant about stepping forward to be the leader. Many of them immediately pick up on the idea that the leader is basically putting a target on their back, and none of them seem to want to volunteer for the role, with the exception of the exemplar Naoa. Because he's willing to accept the responsibility, the rest of the Scrolls tribe gladly elect him to the position, and he seems excited for the opportunity to take that spot. As with the Swords tribe, the Spells tribe finds itself in a position with several possible leaders available. Several names are thrown out, most notably Sione the Sorcerer, Korakai the Oracle, Thalion the Psychic, and Lim the Bard. Now, it should be noted that Sione does not actually step forward and offer to be a leader. She is put forward by some of the other tribe members, and as soon as she is put forward, she tries to beg out. She does not want the position of being the leader of the tribe. She also recognizes that that is a potential target on her back, so she begs out of the position, and shortly after she begs out of the position, the tribe just seems to settle on Lim the Bard without much additional conversation being needed, or any apparent bitterness on the part of the other two who didn't get the spot. Once the tribe leaders have been selected, Jeff the Goblin introduces the next challenge that the teams are going to face, which is acquiring gear to build their campsite. Each team is given a total of 15 gold and instructed that they must travel into the port city of Ilismagorti and attempt to negotiate for supplies to help build their campsite. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the character building rules of Pathfinder 2e, you will know that 15 gold is a reasonable sum for a single first level adventurer to kit themselves out as they prepare to, well, start their adventures. However, supplying a group of 8 people on 15 gold is a much more serious challenge, meaning that each of the tribes is facing potential shortfalls if they can't negotiate for enough goods with such a small sum of money. Stepping into this challenge, we follow the Swords tribe first, and they actually do reasonably well as they move throughout the city and attempt to find supplies for their camp. Amiri is taking the lead, and Valeros is happy to travel with her. He's very jovial and outgoing, and they both have a grand time interacting with the locals and negotiating and bargaining and trying to get supplies for their camp. However, as the tribe is traveling around town, Jarell is much more reserved, and shortly into this particular challenge, she quietly advises the group to watch their backs, noting that Ilismagorti seems to be a rougher town, and there might be some ne'er-do-wells who might try to take advantage of them during the course of the game. With this critical piece of advice supplied by Jarell, the Swords set aside a small portion of their 15 gold specifically for items and gear to help with camp security at their beach. Next up, we see the Skrulls tribe, and let's just go ahead and say the Skrulls tribe excel at this challenge. They knock this challenge out of the park. Many members of the Skrulls tribe immediately recognize that Ilismagorti is a town of thieves and criminals, and they very quickly take extreme care to conceal information about their group, what they're doing, where they're going, where they're staying, anything like that. And in large part due to the influence of Mariciel, the Skrulls tribe actually pays for some of the gear that they will be using at their campsite. Generally speaking, the Skrulls tribe walks away from this challenge with a healthy assortment of supplies to get them started in the game. The Spells tribe, however, struggle with this challenge. Lenny, as a druid, is familiar with survivalism and how to make do in the wild, so she knows many of the things that the group is going to need. However, one of the immediate problems that becomes apparent in this group is the division between different spellcasting traditions. The Spells tribe may cover magic, but in this particular instance you have representatives of arcane, divine, occult, and primal magic, each with their own unique approach to spellcasting, and as a result they all have their own unique needs. Small arguments begin to break out between members of the Spell tribe as they struggle to decide exactly what they need and exactly what the best investments for their small amount of gold should be. And as many of these conversations are taking place, they unfortunately begin to attract notice from many of the locals who wonder about this strange group of spellcasters walking around town trying to get supplies. Now, it is worth noting that the Spells tribe does not completely bomb this challenge, in large part due to Korakai the Oracle, who has a background as a sailor. He's familiar with what it takes to live on an island, live near the ocean, and after a while, Korakai really steps up and helps the Spell tribe to get some focus to their shopping efforts. So while their supplies are certainly limited compared to the other two tribes, they still get some things to help set up their camp. Once all of the shopping is done, each of the tribes returns to their own unique beaches where they then have to work together to set up their camp. The Swords tribe, responding to some of the dangers pointed out by Jarell, work together to form a very defensible camp. They know that there are many criminals in the town, and they realize that the jungle presents dangers as well, and so they all work with an eye towards what they need to do to help keep their particular camp, their particular tribe, as safe as possible. Now, Mika the Gunslinger, with her background as a guard, works together with Sela the Champion to really oversee the defense of the camp, helping to set up stations and sightlines and other things to make sure that everyone will be as safe as possible. While they're doing this, Harsk the Ranger sets out and catches supper for the group in the form of a few birds that he brings down that they're able to eat. As the evening sets in, the Swords tribe divides up guard duty for the evening and call it a night. Over on the Skrulls beach, it is a slightly different situation, as this tribe seems to be focused much more clearly on the idea of comfort. Thanks to the group's incredible negotiation skills, they have lots of comfort items and lots of things to help make their stay on this beach as vacation-like as possible. Now, it is worth noting that many of the Skrulls tribe recognize some of the dangers associated with the town of Illismagorty, so they do take the time to kind of tuck their camp out of line of sight from other larger beaches, so they definitely take steps to hide where they are staying, but they are not nearly as concerned with defending their camp as they are setting up a place that is fun, that is relaxing, where the entire tribe can just have a good time and enjoy the game. Two individuals on this tribe especially seem to be having a lot of fun. Noah the Exemplar and Yoon the Kineticist are having a grand time as the tribe is running around setting stuff up. They are sharing stories, talking about their past, and just constantly trying to one-up each other with some of the over-the-top exploits that they've had prior to participating in this game. As for the Spells Tribe Beach, the best description of their camp is functional. Defensive measures are honestly non-existent, and the Spells Tribe doesn't take the same time to hide their camp that the Scrolls Tribe did. The camp is just out in the open, but it is being set up. One of the things that quickly becomes apparent is some of the arguments that were happening in town as the group was shopping carry over to the process of setting up the camp, and you quickly see some of these tensions between different spellcasting traditions reigniting as the group is trying to get things pulled together. One of the most notable arguments involves Ezrin on one side and Kira the Cleric and Korakai the Oracle on the other. Thankfully, the argument doesn't get too heated. Lenny the Druid steps in to play Peacemaker, and her Snow Leopard companion Drugami actually brings down some extra game. This helps to offset the somewhat paltry collection of food that the Spells Tribe brought with them. So by the end of the evening, the camp is together, it's functional, it is in place. The Spells Tribe ends the evening watching a friendly wrestling match break out between Tuku the Dragon Eidolon and Drugami the Snow Leopard, and some healthy laughter at the antics of those two can be heard throughout the group. Day 2, Goblin Ball. We get a brief glimpse of camp life first thing in the morning at all three camps. The Swords Tribe is going about morning chores fairly quickly. Amiri the Barbarian, the tribe leader, is just kinda letting everyone do what they want, but most of the members of the tribe are familiar with what to do, so things are getting done. One interesting interaction occurs as Sajan the monk spends some time meditating and going through his katas on the beach, and Naumika the gunslinger spends some time quietly watching this practice and observing what Sajan is doing. Over on the Scrolls Beach, Fumbus has quickly become obsessed with Drovin's new automaton Warp. Drovin the inventor has actually built a goblin-shaped automaton that is traveling around the beach with him, and Fumbus just finds this absolutely fascinating and is trying to ask as many questions as possible. Most of the tribe seems to be in a good mood this morning, with one notable exception. Thea the Witch seems kind of grumpy at the start of the day, but when different members of the group, like Mariciel, try to ask her about it, she just kind of growls and waves them away. However, as the morning progresses, Thea's familiar Dodgy the Fox can be seen hiding under bushes and at various places around camp, just kind of watching the other members of the tribe. Over at the Spells Camp, the morning gets off to a rough start for, well, at least one member of the group, and that member is Ezrin the Wizard. Ezrin the Wizard did not sleep well, and is definitely not amused by Ija the Summoner and her 50 questions first thing in the morning. However, soon enough the time comes for all of the tribes to gather on the Challenge Beach, where Jeff the Goblin introduces the first Team Immunity Challenge, a game of Goblin Ball. Jeff the Goblin spends 5 minutes enthusiastically explaining the rules of Goblin Ball, but as he is going through the rules, only Fumbus seems to understand what on earth he is talking about. The game begins in earnest with multiple balls, multiple goals, multiple nets, and quite a few live animals randomly unleashed in the play space. It is a wild and chaotic mess. Eventually the game ends, and the final score is Spells Tribe 3, Swords Tribe 5, and the Scrolls Tribe managed to win with a final score of 2 exploding chickens. Everyone that's not named Fumbus is very confused by this, including the winning team. Still, Jeff the Goblin announces that as the Spells tribe lost the game, tonight they will be required to vote off one of their tribe members at Tribal Council, and once this announcement is made, each of the tribes depart back to their beaches. Back at the Spells camp, the reality that they have to vote one of their tribe members out quickly sets in for the team, and conversations begin to break out all around the camp as people are trying to talk about who should be voted out that evening. Ezrin, because of his frustrations with Kira and Korakai from the previous day, approaches Lim and Thalion to ask about voting out Kira. Lim shoots down the idea, but suggests that maybe they should consider voting out Korakai instead. However, as Ezrin leaves, Lim and Thalion exchange a silent glance. On the other side of camp, Iji and Lenny can be seen conversing with one another several times throughout the day, while their Eidolon and Snow Leopard companion continue to enjoy random wrestling matches and other games. Kira, for her part, approaches Sione the Sorcerer to discuss the tension around the camp and talk about what they can do to help the entire tribe get along better after the vote is over. Kira is focused on the idea that the tribe needs to operate smoothly if they want to have a chance of success going forward. Sione is quiet, nods a lot throughout conversation, and never openly agrees or disagrees with what Kira has to say. When it's time to leave for Tribal Council, the group gathers their things, including their torches, and sets out for the meeting, but the tribe fails to notice that Sione the Sorcerer, Lim the Bard, and Ija the Summoner hang back just a little bit and converse quietly as they're walking their way towards Tribal Council. When the group arrives at Tribal Council, Jeff the Goblin asks the Spells tribe how they're doing and why they think their tribe has gotten off to a bit of a rough start compared to the other two tribes in the game. Ezrin, as grumpy as ever, can barely hide the words "insane rules" under his breath, and when Jeff the Goblin calls him out on it, Ezrin stutters out something about, "Oh, we're just tired." Several members of the group nod to this point, and Jeff the Goblin kindly acknowledges that fatigue can set in quickly when you're out in the jungle. Next up, Jeff the Goblin asks the group if there are any obvious alliances that are already forming in the group, and if so, what alliances are starting to stand out. The entire group laughs when, in response to this question, Drugami the Snow Leopard just swats Tuku the Dragon Eidolon with his tail. When the laughter subsides, Lim quips that it's good that Drugami and Tuku are not voting, because if they were, they would be an unbreakable alliance. After this, Jeff explains the rules for Tribal Council, and then everyone is sent to vote. And once the voting is completed, Jeff reads the votes, and it is a landslide. 2 votes do fall on Korakai the Oracle, but the remaining 6 votes all go to Ezrin the Wizard. Ezrin huffs as he stands up, grabs his spellbook and his torch, walks up to Jeff the Goblin, and as his torch is being snuffed, looks at the group and says, "At least I'll be sleeping well tonight." After Tribal Council is over, the rest of the Spells tribe walk back to their beach, but honestly the entire tribe seems to be in pretty good spirits, despite the fact they had to vote one of their members off. Day 3. Captain or Crew? Again, we get a brief glimpse of camp life for the 3 different tribes as the morning begins. Over at the Swords tribe, Sela is starting the morning off with a song, and it's not long before Jarell and Valeros both join in and sing as they work to shore up the defenses around camp. Meanwhile, Harsk has definitely taken over the role of providing food for the camp and starts out early in the morning to gather fish and birds and other food for his tribe mates. Over at the Scrolls tribe, Quinn actually wakes up over an hour before dawn and sneaks off in the first attempt by anyone on the tribe to go idol hunting in the jungle. However, when he returns shortly before dawn, Mauriciel is already awake, sitting quietly by the fire, and she notices Quinn's return and his seeming frustrations at the results of his efforts. Finally, over at the Spells Beach, as a beautiful dawn breaks over the camp, we see that Lenny is preparing breakfast for the team, while Tuku and Drugami are busy playfully bickering over a piece of fish. As the morning progresses, Kira is sitting quietly by the fire watching the sunrise, and eagle-eyed viewers of the program note that her posture is identical to Mauricio's posture on the other beach. However, it's not long after breakfast is finished at all of the camps that a boat arrives to each beach asking for the tribe captains to come for a private meeting. Amiri the Barbarian, Naoa the Exemplar, and Lim the Bard all board the boat and sail away. And as the leaders of the tribes leave, the members of the other camps begin to have some fun in their absence. At the Swords camp, basically everyone scatters, each of them using thinly veiled excuses to go idle hunting in the jungle. Well, almost everyone. It is worth noting that Celtiel the Magus and Jarrell the Swashbuckler break off on their own for a quiet conversation. The Scrolls camp is not nearly as productive, as Mios's tent catches on fire. Fumbus points at Droven, Droven points at Yoon, Yoon points back at Fumbus. Mauriciel actually has the presence of mind to grab a bucket and throw some water putting out the fire. At first, Mios is angry at the accident, but when they realize that the damage is ultimately trivial, they laugh it off and the tension quickly dies down at camp. Meanwhile, over at the Spells camp, an incredible sense of productivity seems to have taken hold of the group. Lenny and Korakai are working together to organize the camp and gather supplies. Sione the Sorcerer and Ija the Summoner can be seen meeting and discussing something in private, and Kira and Thalion actually team up and head out to the jungle together in an effort to hunt for idols. Meanwhile, in a separate location, Jeff the Goblin is meeting with the captains of each of the tribes, and he asks them an important question. What is more important? Where the captain steers the ship, or the state of his crew? The tribe leaders are instructed to make an important choice: captain or crew. All of the captains will be given one bag of rice to take back to their camp to help feed their team. However, based on the choices that the group makes, it is possible that even more rice might be sent back with them. If all of the tribal leaders choose crew, then all of them will receive 2 extra sacks of grain that they can take back to their camp and help make sure that the entire tribe is being fed. However, anyone who chooses to vote captain, instead of extra grain, they will receive a small roll of paper containing a clue for the immunity idol that is hidden near their camp. Finally, Jeff notes, any leader that votes captain will get a clue, but if any leader votes captain, then no extra grain will be sent back for anyone who votes crew. Jeff informs the tribal captains that they have an opportunity to discuss what choice they want to make, but each of them will be required to vote separately. Naoa, Amiri, and Lim take some time to discuss the decision before them, and all of them agree that caring for their team is the top priority. If their team is starving, they're not going to be able to last the game. Lim even admits that his team really struggled to get enough supplies at the start of the game, and they could really use the extra food to help make sure that their team is operating at their full potential. All 3 of the tribal leaders finish their discussion, and everyone agrees that they are going to vote crew. Finally, all 3 of the leaders are brought to a boat to sail back to their beach, and when each leader gets to their boat, they find only 1 bag of rice. Clearly, at least one of the leaders voted captain. The fallout back at camp is dramatic. All 3 of the tribal leaders are angry. As they are discussing what happened with their respective tribes, all 3 of the leaders are complaining that they feel betrayed, that they feel double-crossed. All 3 of the tribal leaders have a suspect of who they believe actually betrayed the decision and selfishly voted captain instead of trying to get more rice for their crew. Amiri, seething with so much rage that she physically rips a log in half, speculates that Naoa is immature and wouldn't think of others before himself. For his part, Noah notes that Lim is crafty with his words and is the sort who could easily lie about what his intentions would be. Meanwhile, at the spells camp, Lim blames Amiri. While he's not sure that she is the one who voted captain, she is very impulsive, and that leads him to believe that she may have ultimately made the decision to choose herself over her team. Later that day, all 3 tribes report to the challenge beach, where the first team reward challenge is going to take place. For this reward challenge, Jeff the Goblin introduces a raft race and offers up an impressive set of fishing supplies for the team that wins. The structure of the challenge is fairly straightforward. Each of the teams is given a set of supplies to construct their own raft, which they then must carry down to the water and race around a set of 3 buoys that are each blinking with a rotating series of magical lights. As the race begins, the Skrulls tribe gets off to a commanding lead, in large part due to Drovin's incredible experience as a crafter. However, the Swords tribe is not too far behind, and ultimately both the Swords tribe and the Skrulls tribe end up dragging their raft into the water very close to one another. Meanwhile, the Spells tribe are running farther behind, but they are doing better today than they did in yesterday's challenge. The Skrulls and the Swords begin to race their rafts out to the water, and as they approach the first buoy, they find out that the challenge is a little more complex than they originally anticipated, as suddenly the water around the buoy begins to rile up and it catches both of the groups off guard. The Skrulls tribe is so surprised by the choppy water that their raft actually capsizes, and they're forced to drag their raft back towards shore so they can try to regroup. The Swords tribe managed to keep their raft upright, but unfortunately they just can't quite push their way through the churning waters. The Spells tribe, by this point, is actually approaching the water with their raft, and they have an opportunity to observe the chaos that is happening. Korakai, with his background as a sailor, focuses on the buoys and begins to recognize that the water is churning in different patterns based on the lights that the buoys are showing. Korakai realizes if they time their actions correctly, they can actually take advantage of the waves and travel with them rather than fighting them. The spells quickly overtake the other 2 tribes, swiftly passing the Skrulls who have just now gotten their raft up and moving again, and soon the spells are caught up with the Swords as well, and timing their efforts perfectly, they manage to quickly make their way around the first buoy. Jarell is also an experienced sailor, and when she realizes what Korakai is doing, she immediately starts directing the Swords tribe to follow suit. However, since the Spells tribe has the advantage, and Jarell is only trying to imitate what she sees the Spells tribe doing, she hasn't fully figured out the pattern yet, the Swords tribe ultimately is not able to catch up with the Spells tribe. As a result, the Spells tribe win the reward challenge and take home a large set of fishing gear that their tribe definitely needs. The Skrulls tribe unfortunately comes in a sad last place on this particular competition, and they definitely seem embarrassed by their loss. Yoon and Mio seem especially upset by the outcome of this challenge, but Naoa is doing their best trying to cheer up the group and encourage everyone that they will do better on the next challenge. The day ends with all of the tribes back at camp, and thankfully none of them are facing a tribal council this evening, so each of the tribes are able to just hang out and get to know each other. Over at the Swords Beach, Valeros is trying to learn a Dwarven drinking song from Harsk and Naumika, and as he's trying to learn the song, Amiri can be heard in the background loudly complaining about the noticeable lack of drink to go along with said drinking song. Over at the Skrulls Beach, Naoa offers to give Mios a tattoo, and initially Mios is interested, but when Naoa returns with several terrifying spined creatures, Mios decides that they're going to pass on the offer for today. Finally, over at the Spells Tribe, Thalion is working to gather some art supplies. Art is something that helps them focus their magic, so they are stretching out some bags to create canvas, they are gathering some local plants to help make some dyes so that they can mix some paint, Thalion hopes to help use some art supplies to focus their magic and really help them get a step up on the game. However, Thalion is not actually familiar with many of the plants around camp, and some of them turn out to be a little more mobile than Thalion anticipates. Thalion thankfully escapes from his predicament, but as an unfortunate side effect, his skin is stained bright purple for the foreseeable future. With that, the sun sets over the third day of Survivor Mediogalti Island. One competitor has been voted out, but the tribes are coming together, their camps are starting to be much more functional, and alliances are beginning to form. How will the rest of the game go? Well, we'll talk about that on the next video in this series. We're going to go ahead and pause this story for now, but I will pick this story back up in the next video in this series, What If the Pathfinder Iconics Played Survivor Part 2, Rain, Rain, Go Away. For now, let me turn the conversation over to you. What do you think about the story so far, and what predictions do you have for what's going to happen next? Let me know who you think is well positioned to go deep in this game, and let me know which characters you think are likely to get their torch snuffed early. Also, let me know if you agree with Ezrin being the first character voted out of this what if scenario. Don't forget to do all of the YouTube stuff that helps to support this channel. Like, share, subscribe, check out my free Discord and my Patreon. All of that will be linked in the video description. But, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.